Hey, a very good morning to you. It's another beautiful Wednesday, and if it's Wednesday, you know we have the Financial Clinic where we talk about issues relating to money. Your money. Yes, we talk about careers, we talk about savings, we talk about investments, we talk about different opportunities available for you to get to know about and how to harness on that. This morning, we want to have a very interesting conversation. It's all about intellectual property. When you hear the word intellectual property, what are some of the things that come to mind? Today, I pray that by the time we are done with our conversation for today, you'll be at a place where you will understand what intellectual property is all about and also have an eye to see the opportunities that are presented before you where the realm of intellectual property is concerned. I'll be introducing my guest to you in the next short while, and as always, I'm inviting you to be a part of this conversation. If you have questions, don't hesitate. Sometimes you wait until too long, 10 minutes to 9, and then you start asking questions and we don't have enough time to cover them. So if you get a thought, if you get a question, please send it in immediately. 20316 SMS line, WhatsApp number 0786316316. So it is Wednesday, and Wednesdays we have what we call the Financial Clinic. Today we want to talk about intellectual property. In studio with me this morning, I'm very pleased to host intellectual property lawyer,
Yes.
Ogwang Omuga.
Yes, my brother.
You know, your name is always a tongue twister for me.
Yes, it is. It is.
It is for many people as well.
In Africa, you can't be an African and have a simple name,
Right?
you know, like Steve. You know,
It has to be Ogwang.
you know, a simple name like Joel.
Yeah.
You know, you would be like, "Are you a scam?"
Oh my goodness.
So that name brings out the Africanness
Uh-huh.
in this individual.
Wow.
Yes, my brother.
Good to have you on the show today.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me. I don't take it lightly.
Yes.
It's indeed a privilege and the most befitting honor
Wow.
that heaven can show upon a simple Luo.
When I'm deep. When I'm deep.
Unaweza kudrown. Na bado.
Oh my goodness. I can tell my job is going to be hard today.
Okay.
Intellectual property.
Yes, bro.
What is intellectual property?
Before we even begin with what is intellectual property, I wanted just to build a basic understanding
Okay.
that in life, one of the most constant purpose for life is productivity.
Very true.
That when you and I and someone else, when we are conceived by the wombs of our respective mothers, until death, there is one duty that life places on all of us,
Yeah.
regardless of your sphere, regardless of where you find yourself. And this duty is, can you see what you can become? Can you see what can come out of the sum total of your life?
Yeah.
That when all is said and done, when we have sung all the songs we can sing, and when we have prayed all the prayers we can pray, what came out of your life?
Yeah.
So that one is what I would term as the basic interest that life has on all of us is for us to be productive. And there's only one way that anyone can be productive, and that is find a work to do,
Yes.
which is different from finding a job to do.
Very
But
true.
that's a conversation for another day. And if we are to find work, then it is of a necessity for us to appreciate the different levels of work that people engage in. There are people that we engage in work and our work is generally manual.
Yes.
That for me to do something, I'll need to sweat.
KYM.
Right? What's KYM?
KYM. Kada ya moko.
Kada ya moko?
Kazi ya mkono.
Oh, kazi ya mkono. You know, you understand why, because I'm deep and you're shallow. So, unaleta kwa shallow end.
Yes. Yeah.
So work, there are people that their main work is defined by physical abilities, strength.
Yeah.
I need to sweat.
Which is a limited resource.
Which is a limited resource, but you're going ahead of me.
Oh, sorry.
So I wish we could just.
Now I'm getting deeper.
When I get deeper,
Yes.
and then when I hit that, mtu anasema Jemo ashasema hiyo, so anakopi Jemo. But
Yeah.
there is another type of work that is where we work intellectually, and this work intellectually or working physically, none is preferred over the other.
Okay.
We wouldn't say that if you're working by sweat, man, you're not working. Oh, we una work na intellectual. Oh, we una work. Apana. At the end of the day,
Yeah.
work is consistent. And for work to be consistent, work is validated by one thing. Are you rewarded at the end of your work?
Yes.
And is your reward commensurate with the level of effort you have put for you to be validated as work?
Yeah.
And work is consistent whether in the spiritual realm or in the physical realm. One of the ancient scripts that I once read says that for he who comes to God must first believe that he is.
Yeah.
And more importantly than him being is that he is a generous rewarder.
Uh-huh.
Right?
Yes.
So there is a component of reward in everything about life. That thing that validates your existence is at what level of reward are you? Because life, when we are placed here by God,
Yeah.
whether you work spiritually or you work physically,
Yeah.
whether you work at the market space or you're working somewhere else, at the end of the day, we are all working. And this work must be validated.
Yeah.
Now, the beautiful thing with work, I'm one of those guys who love to read extensively. I read somewhere that the Hebrew word for worship is the same word for work.
For work.
Because in the Hebrew context, work is see what you can become. So when God tells Adam that, Adam, I want you to till the ground, do this, God was telling Adam, I want you to exploit the full reach of the ground. Yes. So if you have a piece of shamba, what can come out of it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
As an individual, whether in church, whether at the marketplace, as an individual in academia, in sports, in industry, in fashion, when God actually looks down on all of us, the command has always been one. See what you can do with it. See what it can become.
Because he's looking for fruit.
So at the end of the day, that is work. But in the interest of this conversation, we must narrow that work down to an element of working intellectually. Because work is any engagement to which an individual or someone else will assume the role of rewarding you.
Yeah.
Yes. So when I work for myself, I'm calling that work. When I'm working for someone else and that someone else assumes the role of rewarding me, it's called a job. A job is when someone else assumes the role of rewarding you.
Yeah.
Yes, I will reward you for your time. I will reward you for your expertise.
Yes.
I will reward you for a specific target and delivery output.
Very true.
So when we arrive there, that aspect of reward is on someone else. That is called a job. And that is why when I go to if I'm a banker, for instance, my bank, I don't say I'm working, in as much I'm saying I'm working, but I'm a job in the bank.
Yeah.
Because the bank assumes the role of rewarding me.
Very true.
So in that understanding, intellectual property also is a category of work that individuals, and I love what you have said, most of us, we are engaged in intellectual property related works without us appreciating that what I'm doing is not necessarily physical.
Yeah.
It might have an element of it being physical, but actually the reason why I'm at the marketplace, the way I appear, is because of a necessity. What I am doing is purely intellectual property related work. Now, the question was, Mr. Ogwang.
Yes.
Right? By the way, dear viewer, my friends also call me Blacks.
I'd forgotten that one.
Blacks. Okay.
Mm.
So, when I say Ogwang, people think I'm old. Eh?
Yeah.
You know, so people will rush to their TVs. How does it, ladies and gentlemen? Anyway, so there is that level of work that is called intellectual property work. So intellectual property, for the interest of this conversation, is that intellectual property is that work that an individual works from their mind.
Mm-hmm.
That is the scholarly definition of intellectual property. That intellectual property is any creation of the human mind, full stop.
Okay.
Not the human brain.
There's a
There's
difference
a
between.
huge difference between a human brain and the human mind.
Ebu tufafanulie.
This thing that we have up here,
Yeah.
this gray matter,
Yeah.
is called the brain.
Brain.
The mind is a faculty of your soul.
Mm-hmm.
The brain can be trained. You can never train your mind.
Oh, really?
You don't train your mind.
Yes.
Your mind knows all things. Your mind guides.
Mm-hmm.
Paul says somewhere in Romans, and it is with the spirit of the mind we serve the Lord. Yes. So that's a conversation for another day.
Uh-huh.
So let us just limit it to this extent. The scholarly definition of intellectual property is that intellectual property is anything that an individual can create from their mind.
Okay.
Now there is another legal definition. Being a lawyer, I
Yeah.
must define
Yeah.
something legal.
Yes.
So the legal definition of intellectual property is that intellectual property is the creation of the human minds and the rights that originate from those works.
Uh-huh.
So that if I create something and kukuwe na discourse at law, the courts of law will always side with whose right.
Yes.
Yes, as far as this work is concerned,
Yeah.
whose rights
Who has the rights to this work?
to this work,
Okay.
and who has the rights to compensation, remuneration, and reward.
Okay.
You remember those tulisema, for work to be legitimate,
Yeah.
you must be rewarded.
Yes.
If you just engage in work without reward, that's not work. You're a busybody. What to the busybody?
Yes.
Even in the faith, the thing that makes us to be faithful to God is that one day he will reward us.
Yeah.
So that one can be ultimate and also immediate. He's rewarding us every day for our diligence. So there's another definition of intellectual property. Now this is the one I would wish us to
Explore.
explore.
Yeah.
Intellectual property is the creation of the human mind with the interest of commercialization. That if I can create something from my mind, if I can come up with a phrase, there's a friend that you and I both know.
Yeah.
Recently came up with a devotional book.
Yeah. I know that guy.
You
I
know that guy?
Yes.
And shame on him. I don't even have a copy.
Oh
yet.
my goodness. I'll talk to him.
Shame on him.
Yeah.
So intellectual property is the creation of the human mind and the markets that can come out of that. So yes.
So would you say everybody has intellectual property?
The only disqualifier would be, do they have a head? Yes, they do
They
have a
do
head.
have a head. That's why they are alive.
Yes. Then they have multiple and diverse layers of intellectual property.
Why then is it that a lot of us don't explore that avenue?
Because we are not aware.
Uh-huh.
We are not aware that this thing that I have, there is a phrase that you've said earlier, that at the end of this conversation, someone should have an eye to see that this thing that I'm doing, this thing, something can come out of it. Actually, everything that an individual does every day has a potential to create a market outside there. The only problem here is that we are never aware that this thing that I'm doing has a component to go beyond what I'm currently doing it at.
Okay.
This thing, if I'm a singer at church, my voice has a component of creating a market out there for me. If I'm an athlete, that thing, that vocation, that thing that I've chosen for myself has a potential to create a market out there. So intellectual property is that realm that understands and seeks to build awareness in an individual. That you see this thing that you're doing, it's not just an ordinary stuff. That this thing that you're doing has the potential to create a market. And the good thing that I'm actually grateful to God for your audience is that I'm talking to believers.
Yeah.
How is it that, okay, of course there are 10 million reasons why, but how is it that most of us cannot access the full promises of scriptures. Like there is one in First Peter that says that we are freely given all things that pertain to
life and godliness. Yes.
One of the ways of accessing the reservoir of God, one of those ways that as believers we can use to unlock kingdom economy is whereby every individual should be aware of their intellectual property and what can come out of those things that they are doing. Is it a skill that you have?
Yeah.
Something can come out of it.
Okay.
Is it a talent that you have? Something that can come out. Is it something that engages you? Is it something that engages you on the basis of interest? Something else can come out of it. Are you a tailor? Something can come out of it. Are you an author? Something can come out of it. Are you a consultant, a coach? Mostly, and this is the challenge that we have, especially around consulting and coaching. Is that we have never identified that knowledge is a raw material. Just the same way the people that developed this jacket that you have and this suit that I have, they developed it from something called an apparel. An apparel is made from cotton. And from there they cut it in such a way, someone stitched it and have voila, a suit. So in the same way, knowledge is the least exploited form of resource in the African continent, because we have never identified that knowledge is proprietary. What that word proprietary means is that knowledge is something that you can stake a claim on. What that means, Jemo, every person with a certificate did a project. From that project, they were putting across knowledge. Any person with a diploma did a project. Any person with a bachelor's degree, any person with a postgraduate degree has a component that most of us, we have never appreciated, that this component that I was putting out there, any person that is writing a book, as long as that book is coming from a point of conviction, and you've done some research about it, you are putting across knowledge. So to dial everything back, intellectual property is that creation of the human mind and the markets or the commerce that can come out of it.
In fact, you've said something about the diplomas and the certificates. There's a question I'll ask you, because we live in a country where jobs are scarce. And you have people who have more degrees than a thermometer. And yet they have nothing to do. They can't find a job. Not they can't find work, they don't know the work, they can't find a job. Why is that so? We'll talk about that shortly. In the meantime, if you have any questions for us, 20316 is the SMS line. WhatsApp number 0786 316 316. Remember, we are talking about intellectual property. Wednesday, it is the financial clinic. Today we have taken a totally different route. Tutafika tu hapo mahali unangojea tufike. Intellectual property is what we are talking about. In studio, I have Blacks.
Yes, it's actually BLUX. It's actually BLUX. Some people ask, but then when I heard your name is called Blacks, I was expecting some dark guy, and I'm no. It's not BLACKS, it's BLUX.
Ogwang Omuga, intellectual property lawyer. I was going to ask you this question.
Yes, bro.
Because you talked about degrees and diplomas and all that.
Bro.
If that then is the case, I find it very interesting. You have people who graduate, whether with a diploma, a certificate, or a degree, or even a master's. And yet they can't find something to do. Why is that the case then?
The issue is not they can't find something to do.
They can't find a job.
It's not even they can't find a job. It's because the system of academia has nurtured people that are weak intellectually.
Oh, really?
Really. I have conversations that sometimes you even have conversations with people, and they're like, man, you know, there's a sister-in-law I love so much. So whenever we have conversations, and she's doing her master's degree in peace and conflict, some of those big words with small meanings. So, and I engage her, and she's like, you know, Shidako inakuwaga ni moja, you're very controversial. And then I tell her, my dear, it's because you don't have the stamina to withstand an intellectual discourse. So the challenge that we have always had with the academia is academia has nurtured weak-minded people that we have never explored, that this thing that have come out with, right? What challenge in the society can I direct it at? So if I direct my learning, if I direct my schooling, if I direct, how many times have you ever heard people have these jokes on social media? Ati mazee nimetafuta job nani by the ulienda interview kuulizwa trigonometric ratios?
Yes, I've heard those things. Yes,
I'm a lawyer now. How is trigonometric ratios helping me? Not knowing that trigonometric ratios was equipping your mind with tools and resources that you can be inquisitive. The real purpose of education is for your mind to be inquisitive, your brain to be inquisitive, so that your brain can access your mind.
Yes.
And when you can access your mind, then you can direct what you have learned, what you have picked up, knowledge that you have put out there. You can direct it to a specific challenge in our society, in our generation, and from that, you can create out your own employment. The challenge has always been how can we create a pathway? I've done sociology, I've done law, I've done this. The expectation from society is that I need to operate in a particular way. But the expectation of knowledge is that knowledge can transcend boundaries. Right? So if I'm equipped in a particular manner, now wakanipatia power to read and to write and to do. Those are three powers, Bana. Power to read, to write, and to do. And I find nothing to write, I find nothing to read, and I find nothing to do. Then that means I am not fully baked through the system of academia. So the issue has always been, how is it that the gentleman that perfected incandescent, that gentleman did not go to school? So while he might not be educated, but that gentleman accessed knowledge. The Wright brothers were just bicycle mechanics. Yes, but they accessed knowledge. Knowledge you cannot. I don't like institutions where you go to, we will give you knowledge. Knowledge is not given. Yes, knowledge is what you give out in answering to a specific need that is in a society. Whenever you are in that sphere, you're knowledgeable. The challenge has always been, how do I direct mathematics to the problem that now we have with low castes? How do I direct tourism to the challenge that we have with lack of avenues of meaningful engagement for people to generate economic productivity? So to that extent, Pasivilo Menuliza, that is the challenge. And rightly put, I'm thinking that my employer will give me that opportunity, or someone will give me that opportunity. Yes, Pasi.
So would I be right in saying a lot of us just have information but no knowledge?
Would you be right? Yes, you are definitely right. Yes, most of us are just informed. You know, we were just informed. There's a time I'm engaging some people and I'm like, oh, we want to give. No, you can't give me knowledge. No, you can't. Actually, knowledge is never given. Knowledge is never, and that's why actually it's one of the gifts of the Spirit. Because knowledge is what you do from the reservoir of the mind. The human mind knows all things. The human mind. The human brain is limited. And that's why scientists say that we're only using 4% of your brain, not your mind. If you can tap into your mind, my bro, there is nothing you cannot express yourself onto. I always tell people, the challenge that we have is that we have never been taught to access the mind. So I am doing this out of experience. I'm doing this out of Nini. I'm doing this because I've read from Google. I've done this. But to access knowledge, one of the most beautiful ancient scriptures says that for a believer, now we have the mind
of Christ.
The mind of Christ.
Yes.
So which means it's even operating at a higher level.
Because the mind of Christ has no limits.
I'm not just operating. If let me tell you, Pastor.
Yeah.
If the human mind has no limits, and the Bible says we should not operate from the human levels, then how much more should a believer be?
I'm telling you.
Every one of us,
Yeah.
Uhuru Kenyatta should be having us on his speed dial. Why? Because that is what the same thing that they did with Daniel. Daniel would answer any other question.
Yes.
But Daniel didn't have the mind of Christ. No, they didn't.
Yeah.
Moses didn't have the mind of Christ. Our father Abraham didn't have the mind of Christ. The mind of Christ has only come after now we get regenerated.
Yes.
So every believer, and this is what I wish to say, every believer who is listening to me and those who are not even listening to us, every one of us, we have a lot of intellectual property. We have things. There's a lady called Dorcas.
Yeah.
In the book of Acts.
Yeah.
This lady, even if that city had 50 people, the entire city wore her clothes. In every church you go to today, there is a tailor. Every church you go to today, there is a tailor. That tailor only services 200 people or 50 people in that church. In this economy of 47 million Kenyans, right?
Yeah.
And in the wider East African of 300 million plus people, and in the African continent, everyone who can do something, there is enough existing infrastructure that can help us to scale up productivity. Dorcas, those days, hawakuwa na cherehani. So let's say they were stitching Nathons.
Yes.
Nathons, right? But the entire city wore her clothes. Today, if Dorcas was alive, Dorcas would be Dolce and Gabbana. Dorcas would be Hugo. Dorcas would be... Why? Because if you can just learn how to convert... So the interest of intellectual property is, okay, I've written a book.
Yeah.
So probably someone is asking, oh, this guy is talking good, eh?
Yeah.
But aniambi kitu naweza ka
Let's
act.
break it down.
Yes, kitu naweza ka act.
Yeah.
Sawa. Every person that has written a certificate was putting out knowledge.
Yeah.
So in our generation, what are the different variations of knowledge we have? Vision 2030 is knowledge that came from an individual's brain. The knowledge that we have today, we can license. The word license simply means that if I can identify, I've written this book, and from this book, there is this thing that I was putting out across. And this thing that I'm putting out across is uniquely me.
Yes.
You're a book writer. The first thing that you begin by writing a book, you ask yourself, what is my framework? That framework is the beginning of your intellectual property. When you're doing an academic project, the project comes from what is my question? What is the hypothesis? What is the question that I seek to explore?
Yes.
That question is the beginning of intellectual property. Now, what you do with this knowledge is you ask yourself, this knowledge, how then do I convert this knowledge? How do I convert this thing that I'm stitching? Me, I'm a tailor.
Yeah.
How do I convert my stitching into an industry? Right?
Yes.
Now, that is the interest of intellectual property. So then you ask yourself, what is unique about the way I stitch? Is it the way I cut? Is it the specific designs? Is it the way I stitch specifically? And then you ask yourself, then, if I was to put this thing in a market economy of 100 million people, what would I require? And then you say, I would require a production plant. And then intellectual property tells you, no, you don't require a production plant. Intellectual property tells you, what are the unique things in the way you are stitching that are uniquely yours, that you can own? And then you ask yourself, who has the infrastructure within which you can position that thing that you're doing and they will produce them in bulk? And that's what we have EPZ for. EPZ is a state body. It's a parastatal under the Ministry of Industrialization. How is it that it's only Indians our Indians, brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
You know, when you want to sound politically correct, you must put that word, brothers and
sisters.
sisters. How is it
Yeah.
that today only Indians are taking advantage of
the EPZ?
Because of knowledge.
Aha.
They know.
Yes.
So they will license. People wear Marks and Calvins and Klein.
Yeah.
Calvins and Klein entered into a 3.7 billion Kenya shillings tender with EPZ.
Wow.
These boxers men flaunt around at Minawaya CK.
CK.
Toki states inamekiwa hapa with Athi River. Hapa hivi Athi River. So if that knowledge we knew, if we knew that, oh, that's not even knowledge, that's just information.
Yeah.
So if we had that information, that unaweza katoka hapa hivi with the design,
yeah,
and then you identify the unique aspects of your design, and then you own those aspects, then license it to Calvin to EPZ.
They must produce.
There's a lady who designed the shirt that Uhuru wore.
Yes.
Right? In 2017, I think. Yes?
Yeah, we remember that shirt.
Yes. What did Uhuru wear? People say Uhuru wore a shirt. No, Uhuru was naked. Because that shirt didn't have an owner.
Oh, really?
No, it didn't.
What do you mean?
Because if you ask me what am I wearing,
yeah,
I will tell you F&F tailoring.
Aha.
Right?
Yeah.
So I'm wearing F&F.
Yes.
Right? Uhuru wore nothing. It was an amazing good shirt. It was well designed.
But it didn't have an owner.
It didn't have an owner. If that lady knew that design was proprietary, the word proprietary simply means something that you can own.
Yeah.
If that lady knew that she could own that design, I'm telling you, every African president today would be wearing that shirt. Which means the mere fact that Uhuru wore it validated that shirt is presidential.
Very true.
Presidential. So which means today that lady would be billionaire without necessarily doing anything, effortlessly. And that reminds me, the Bible says that the days are coming when the sower, yes, the reaper shall overtake the sower. And these are those days that we have the enabling infrastructure here.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Infrastructure that is here. I don't know if I can give an example, another example.
Give another example. Give another example.
I have a client.
We connect with examples.
I have another client who works with one of these foreign missions in the embassies. And so this lady, by day, she does her day job. At night, she sketches. She sketches.
Yeah.
She loves to sketch. So somehow she got hold of my card, and in consulting, she asked, what do you think I should do? Because I've done research and feasibility studies. Some of those words that mean nothing. But have you done feasibility studies?
Yes.
Where did the Wright brothers do feasibility studies? Who are they even to study against? so she said she had done feasibility studies.
Yes.
And in her feasibility studies, she needed 19 million to put together a modest plant.
19 million.
19 million.
Yes.
I told her, no, you don't need 19 million. Yes. All you need is to open an office, register that office, and you need to identify in your designs what are owned by you. F&F, they don't own this, the design for court. No. There's someone who owns this.
Yeah.
But there's a specific thing that they have added to what already exists.
Yes.
That component that they've added, that is what is called F&F. So that is the one that distinguishes this coat from another
others.
coat
Yeah.
at the marketplace.
Yeah.
If you were to wear Marks and Spencer, the other day I went to this guy and he looked at my coat and he asked me, "Boss, is that Hugo Boss?" And I'm like, "No, this is not Hugo Boss." And the guy told me, he just came and looked at the buttons.
Yeah.
And Akambia, there's only one company in the world that manufactures this. And so just by looking at the buttons,
Oh, really?
I know this is Hugo Boss.
And he was right.
And he was right. So, and that's what I'm saying. So I asked her, Sandra, oh, she's called Sandra, in this, what do you own? And so we identified the unique things that she owns in her design.
Yeah.
today I can walk into the supermarkets. She licensed that to a manufacturing company in China that is now supplying her in bulk,
What?
effortlessly. That is the generation that we are living in. We are living in a generation whereby
Yeah.
whatever you can do.
Uh-huh.
Have you come up with a devotional book? Yes. Thank God. What else can come out of it? What new market avenues are there that if you just identify, if you just look at the devotional and how you have structured the devotional,
Yeah.
what components are uniquely you? How many people have devotionals?
Many.
But yours has a space.
Yes.
Yes. You just need to find a way of validating that space.
Uh-huh.
If you can find them, could be in your style of writing, could
Yes.
be in. If you can just identify them, there is enabling infrastructure that someone waking up from Vietnam
Yeah.
6 months from now will be reading your devotional. It's because we have the infrastructure. So intellectual property seeks to empower an individual,
Yeah.
regardless of what you're doing. Yes, you could be selling charcoal.
Really?
You
So
could be selling charcoal.
It could be anything.
It could be anything and everything. How many people do you know that sell kuku?
Many.
But how is it that KFC is distinct? What's their product? They're merely selling kuku.
Yeah.
Yes. How many people do you know that sell coffee?
Many.
Even we used to have a parastatal just for coffee.
Yeah.
How is it that I can't even remember the parastatal,
By the way.
but I know Java? Do we have Java in Kenya?
All over the place.
No, we don't have Java in Kenya. Java is like a small company in the States that is only exploiting their intellectual property, and they are all over the world.
Ooh, now I get
The
you.
same thing with Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
Coca-Cola is like a small company somewhere in Atlanta. They are only exploiting their intellectual property. And they even give us the secret in the bottle. It's written, made under a Coca-Cola license.
Yeah.
That is their entire business model. They sell 1.7 billion bottles a day out of exploiting intellectual property.
Wow.
The future, Jemo.
Yes.
Before those people begin the sounds in your ears. The future.
Yes, before the voices come.
Before the voices in your ear.
Yeah.
The future for the church. You know, most of us, we quote a verse.
Yeah.
And this verse goes like this. For the wealth of the heathen is laid up for the just.
Hallelujah.
Right?
Yes.
The only way we can actualize that verse is by appearing at the marketplace. And when we appear at the marketplace, we appear at specific points of transaction.
Yeah.
That's why Jesus lamented by saying, oh man, this generation is like kids playing at the market. That's what we are constantly doing.
We are playing in the market.
At the market.
Instead of trading.
Yes, we have not understood that there is a higher burden on my shoulder. So you think you're a lawyer? So you think you're practicing law? That does not impress God. What impresses God is if I can identify unique things in my practice,
Yeah.
and I take that back to God and say, Lord, with this, how can I get China? Lord, with this that I've identified in my practice,
Yeah.
Lord, how can I get the entire Africa? Because Psalm says, ask of me the nations.
Yes.
So what excites God is when we arrive at a point of transaction and then we ask ourselves, I'm just not an ordinary charcoal seller.
No.
I'm not just an ordinary chapati maker. Right?
Yes.
Can there be a unique thing in my recipe?
Kuna maswali hapa.
Yes.
Before we start hearing voices.
The voices.
Yes, the voices are almost coming. Somebody's asking,
Yes.
if I design a training program,
Yes.
how do I go about registering it as copyright, and how does intellectual property rights come into
Beautiful.
this kind of thing? Yeah.
The mere fact of having a training program,
Yeah.
that the mere thought actually operates to confirm that this gentleman has a unique proposition, even without the program.
Yeah.
even without the program. What that gentleman needs is not even copyright. That gentleman needs to design the program and to harness the intellectual property components in the program. And the components are more than copyright. Copyright only restricts someone from copying it.
Yeah.
It does not prevent someone else from doing the same. It's just copying.
Yeah.
Yes. Every musician has a copyright certificate.
Yes.
How is it that people still pirate music?
Yes.
Because we have never thought of what other thing can come out of this copyright that someone else cannot do. So my brother or my sister who has a training program,
Yes.
what they really need to do is to design intellectual property models. I'm sorry for using some two-doggo words, but that program is pushed by a main framework. That main framework, if he can find it, that is gold. And that is the framework that he can license to universities, and no one will ever compete with him. Because that is knowledge.
Yeah.
That is something that no one trained him or her.
Okay.
No one. He has just said, if I put together 1, 2, 3, 4, how is it that we came up with subjects? People thought.
People thought.
People thought.
Yes.
And after thinking, people went and verified. And after verification, they went and they received other registration, authorization, and blah, 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 blah. At the end of the day, I have a client who did a PhD thesis.
Yeah.
And now there's this requirement that you need to put it online.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
A company somewhere in Düsseldorf, Germany, came across it. And they said, hey, in Europe, they're very serious. 99% of the economy is IP. They don't joke. They're very serious. Us guys, our major economy is agriculture.
Yeah.
Shame. So,
Yes.
so they came across and they say, hey, we would want you to allow us to explore further what you're putting out. And she said, no, let me go ask some of my PhD friends.
Yes.
And everyone said, no, don't allow them. They will spoil the overall character and body and integrity of your work.
As many people would say.
Long story short, every year for the next 17 years, she's receiving 120,000 euros for licensing that.
What?
Because I helped her to identify what she was putting out, and that is uniquely hers. So my friend, our brother, our sister, what they need to have is to understand within this training project, there is something that is uniquely there.
Yeah.
That anything else can collapse and that one remains. If he can find that,
Yes.
my brother, you're a billionaire.
Wow.
Yes.
Another question here says, this session is quite an eye-opener. As a farmer, how do I tap into intellectual property?
Beautiful. Actually, one of the areas whereby people have neglected intellectual property is in farming. Because in farming, every day, even as crops cross-pollinate,
Yes.
they affect each other. There is a farmer somewhere in Limuru that noticed that in his farm alipoanza kumeesha vitu alimeesha cabbage za green. In the first rotation zikatoka za green. In the second rotation zikatoka za purple.
Hiya.
Yes. So the guy, the neighbor, is an advocate. Akamwambia, hey, there is something unique about your farm. Today that farm has been adopted by wanaitwa ILRIS, out to agriculture, Kenya Agriculture is Kari. Kari has adopted his farm as a model farm and he earns royalties from that farm.
Ooh.
Yes. Intellectual property, my brother, is in everything. You know, the first nini, the first watermelon was circular. And then, because the farmer who planted it cross-pollinated na ingine aka kitu yenye malenge.
Yeah, okay.
Yes. And then in cross-pollination ikakuwa oval.
Oh.
And then the gentleman called it sugar baby. Do you know that has been adopted? You don't want to know how much he's earning from that.
What?
Intellectual property helps us to be aware of our environment, either as individuals or as everything around us. Everything around us.
Yes.
I hope nimemjibu. But even for further conversation, I just want him to be aware that as you're a farmer, this is the rule they have in farming. That if you are farming, your farm and the other farm should have the gap between them should be 400 meters.
Oh.
So which means cross-pollination does not exceed 400 meters.
Yeah.
Yes. So even if they were to send their pollen, haifiki 400 meters. Jemo, hata ushago kwenyu. Shamba ziwagaje?
Aini.
Hapa na hapa.
Hata kafence mtu songesha.
Exactly. And then unapata hata kwa the same farm umeka mahindi, umeka sijui nini na nini na nini. So bado pia zina cross pollinate. And sometimes unaonaga mahindi fulani imetoka na jina hii mahindi inakaa funny. How come hii mahindi iko na some specks of pink? That is IP.
Oh.
There's actually a branch of IP that is called plant and seed varieties. And people who are doing that, especially around Kari areas, man, those people are making amount of money from royalties because the farm is theirs.
Yes.
It's from your farm that this thing came. Yes. So now they are exploring it and they are conducting further research so as to build into the wealth of what we would call knowledge, which is information in books.
Wow. The voices have started.
They have.
Yes.
Yes.
What would your parting shot be to those who are listening in today? Maswali nazo zinaingia, but we don't have time.
The parting shot would be one. I hope your viewers will impress upon you. Jemo bana, have that guy bana, have that guy again.
They will. Imagine they will.
But even more importantly, begin to be aware of yourself. There are people that in growing up, someone would call you a name and that name sticks.
Yeah.
That one, companies pay money for that. Everything about you. If you have something that either makes people like your company or people like what you do, that is intellectual property. If you can run, something else can come out of that. If you can cook and you have a tremendous recipe that is uniquely you, the way you go about stuff, that is intellectual property. My parting shot, I hope I'm not going to be shot outside, but my parting shot, my friend, become aware of you as an individual, become aware of the things you're engaged in on a day-to-day, and become aware of your environment. You could be sleeping on gold, liquid gold, literally.
Wow.
Thank you very much for your time.
Were you the one who told me a story about? I've just remembered. Maybe you can, if you're the one, you can share it, and then we wrap up.
Okay.
Were you the one who shared with me a story about Churchill?
Yes, I did.
And exercise books.
Yes.
Tell us that story, and then we wrap up.
I was organizing an event, and you know, because of an undisclosure agreement, you know, the words get out quickly, and then some. But what does Churchill own? We discovered he owns Kids Festival, and we discovered he also owns something else called Hekaya za Ngochacho. If you walk into a supermarket today, utapata books flying off the shelves, zinaitwa Kids Festival and Hekaya za Ngochacho. The guy does not own any plant ya kumanufacture books. He has merely licensed the trademark in those designs for people that have existing infrastructures to do that, and they don't have things that can give them money. We are living, Jemo, whereby my favorite rapper, when I used to listen to music, used to say, I'm not a businessman.
No.
I am a business man. Everything about you, we should be like the Jews. Everything about them is converted into an industry, into a sector, into an economy. Everything about them. We have written books about their Jewish culture, Jewish this, Jewish naming, the names of God. Those are part of the Jewish culture.
The voice is
so
screaming.
Everything. Thank you very much for your time.
We'll definitely have a part 2.
Yes, bro.
Yes. If you're interested in a part 2 with blacks, please let me know. 20316 SMS line. WhatsApp number 0786 316 316. I hope this has triggered you to think, because apparently thinking is one of the hardest jobs to do. That is why very few people engage in it.